The separation of church and state goes poof in a cloud of papal climate change action. I'm Brian Lilley with TheRebel.media. If you haven't heard yet, Pope Francis has issued an encyclical on climate change. Now, if you're not familiar with the term encyclical, it essentially means a Catholic teaching document. It's meant to teach the faithful on certain matters, and in this case, it's climate change. Pope Francis goes way out of his area of competency, as they like to say, within the Catholic Church, and starts speaking on issues of science. He starts speaking on issues of climate, on business. He bashes big business. He bashes business, period. He talks about the need for a global authority, which violates years of Catholic teaching. But his encyclical on this matter is being met with welcome arms by people that normally don't want to hear from the Pope at all. Media outlets that are normally happy to talk about how religious leaders shouldn't be involving themselves in politics, well, they're very happy to welcome this Pope's message on climate change, whether it's the Toronto Star or the New York Times or any of the other progressive media outlets that normally just want to denigrate papal teachings. Now they're willing to welcome them. And it's not just media outlets that are like that, it's political leaders as well. And thus we have Justin Trudeau, the Liberal leader, going to Twitter to say that the Pope's message needs to be heeded. Listen to what he actually says on this. The Pope's call to action on climate change must be answered strongly and seriously by our government and the entire global community. At Pontifex. In the House of Commons, John McKay, Liberal MP, stood up and then was applauded by all his fellow Liberal MPs as he called on the government to follow the Pope's words on climate change.
In a comprehensive, well-researched and penetrating account of climate change, the Pope zeroed in on the injustice that allows the rich to get richer on the backs of those least able to adapt. Like the prophets of old, he denounced the cavalier indifference of the smug and the affluent. If the Conservative government doesn't get the science and chooses to ignore the economics, surely they will listen to Pope Francis. To ignore faith, science, and economics is to define smug indifference.
Yes, that would be the same Liberal caucus, filled with many Catholics, McKay not among them, but filled with many Catholics, who are willing to swallow themselves whole to vote in favor of abortion at each and every turn because Justin told them to. Now, the Pope may be against abortion, but that doesn't matter. He's for climate change, and therefore, today he's a good man. Now, the NDP, also led by a Catholic, in Tom Mulcair, they led off question period talking about this issue and asking about the government not listening to the Pope.
Francis issued a wake-up call. Climate change is a threat, and the world's poorest people will suffer the most. This isn't just an environmental issue, it is a moral issue. Canada must cut emissions and ensure that less developed countries have the financing that they need to tackle climate change. Only the NDP has a plan to tackle climate change and put a price on carbon. So, did the Prime Minister's short 10 minutes with the Pope make it obvious that nobody believes this government's talking points?
This is all very rich. You've got politicians that normally will say the Pope doesn't need to be listened to, especially on moral matters, and that there is a difference between political leadership and church leadership suddenly saying that you've got to listen to the Pope. Here's Justin Trudeau in an interview with Metro. That's the free urban commuter newspaper handed out in cities like Toronto and Vancouver and Ottawa. And he was asked about the abortion issue. And they read, "On the divisive issue of abortion, Justin Trudeau has a practiced answer. It's one he says is based on personal conviction, not political strategy. He supports a woman's right to choose. He's Catholic, but said that elected representatives should not impose personal views on entire communities. I've sat down with a number of bishops, archbishops, and even a cardinal, and I've talked about the fact that their job as priests is very different than my job as a leader and a politician." We have media outlets and politicians that are normally saying we can't have a mixing of church and state suddenly willing to embrace the Pope in all his big white papal garments and say, this is a man that must be listened to. Why? Because this time he sided with their progressive agenda. This time he has sided with them. Now let me remind you that, once again, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change itself has said that there has been a warming hiatus since 1998. That's in the technical documents. The technical documents, not nearly as political as the documents handed out to politicians. So you know that it's not lying. No warming since 98. But don't worry, the Pope employed some people that go against Catholic teaching on issues such as population and population control and the like. And he decided that you've got to listen, you've got to do something about climate change. And that includes a giant global authority and a change to our entire way of life. On this, the Pope needs to be listened to. On other matters, apparently we can forget him. I'm not buying their hypocrisy, not for 1 minute. And neither should you.